This episode is brought to you by Modal Electronics, who enable you to play and perform powerful sound with their incredible synthesizers. You can enjoy vibrant wavetable patches with the Argon 8 series, or you can produce with state-of-the-art analog-style synth textures with the Cobalt 8 series. To check out Modal Electronics' incredible array of synthesizers, go to modalelectronics.com. Modal Electronics. Dare to sound different.
Yeah, well, I think for everybody, it's been a very challenging year. Perhaps there's the added thing that for performing artists who are used to touring, this is sort of taken away our whole working life, really. So it has been frustrating, because I'm used to, being away a lot of the time, being on the road, performing in concerts. And so for whatever it's been, a year and a half, we've just been sitting at home, counting the minutes and the hours till we can get back on the road again. And
do you have kind of tentative plans to get back on the road?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we're doing a live broadcast from Abbey Road on September the 18th. And anybody can get information about that from thezombiesmusic.com. It's all lowercase. And we will be touring from February 2022.
We were just talking about your upcoming live stream from Abbey Road. So that's on September the 18th, is that right?
Yes.
September the 18th, yeah.
And will this be the first live stream that you've done?
It is the first live stream that we've done. And as we were just saying, we haven't played live for about 18 months. So it'll be the first live concert that we've done in some time. We're really looking forward to it. It's going to be really exciting. And it'll be great going back to Abbey Road as well. We're going to be playing in Studio 2, which is the studio that the Beatles mostly recorded in, whereas we always recorded in Studio 3. But of course, there's a lot of history in Studio 2. So I think it's going to be a very exciting event, certainly for us.
Yeah, well, it's going to be an exciting event for you and for all your fans and for anyone with good taste in music. That is for sure. But so when will you start rehearsing ahead of that? Because your songs are quite intricate. So you must know them well.
Yes, go ahead, Rod.
No, well, that's a very good question, actually, Tom. It's we're sort of quite worried about that, really, because my goodness, it's been about 16 or 17 months, Cole, before since we last played a gig. I think the last one was in Madrid in about November.
It's December, right? It was December, 18 months ago, yeah.
18 months ago, my God. And the thing is, we've been trying to keep ourselves in shape, and we've been recording a new album that we're very excited about. So, that's been going on, but we haven't been able to get the whole band together in one place, which does make things a bit more difficult. But, I really hope that we can get lockdown will be in a state where we can get our bass player over from Denmark, so that we can actually all rehearse together for at least 2 or 3 days. I think we're going to need that to actually...
Only 2 or 3 days?
Well, I mean... I don't know quite else how we're going to do it, to be quite honest. I mean, we're really looking forward to playing live again. We really are. We love doing that, and we love recording as well. But I mean, we just have to do what's going to be possible, really.
Yeah, but that's awesome that you guys. I mean, it's kind of expected. I mean, you'll have played these songs a lot, but 2 or 3 days just to brush them up. I mean, I think most bands would to do something like Time of the Season. Would sort of take about 5 years to learn how to put all of that together.
We're going to be playing some brand new songs as well. So we've certainly got to give those a bit of attention. Songs that we're recording for our new album. So we will have never played those before. So
I had a chat with Colin the other day about this, and we agreed that we'd love to play 4 new songs. Because the thing is, awesome. We're going to be playing all the stuff that people expect anyway. I mean, that you're going to get that. But at the same time, what really energizes us is always creating new material and having the joy of going through that whole process again. So 2 of the new songs we have done a couple of times in the States, but 2 of them we won't ever have got together and played before. And we're really looking forward to doing it, actually. I mean, we've obviously recorded them, and we had to record the bass player remotely on one of the songs. But I'm really looking forward to the whole process. And it's that really which rejuvenates the set, and it's always important. And the great thing that I love is that when we do live concerts, obviously things like Time of the Season go down a complete storm, but at the same time, people react to the new stuff that we do with open arms, and it's the fact that they accept that and get energized by that as well as we do, and it's that makes us feel 18 again when we're on stage.
It's a shame it doesn't make us look 18.
Is it 18 or 81, Cole?
But with this new album, when is this new album going to come out, and how long have you been working on it?
Well, we've been working on it for quite a long time because it's been so piecemeal. In fact, before lockdown really got underway, we'd already recorded Cole? Three songs and finished them.
Yeah.
And we even mastered them, although we may revisit them slightly, but we remastered them to make sure that we were on the right track and everything. And I even got a local radio station here to play a couple of them because I wanted to hear how they sounded on the air. And they sounded great, I have to say. So we were really knocked out with that. And then we had to stop because of lockdown, and it really drove us up the wall. But we have managed to finish 2 more to the state where, they're pretty much ready to be mixed. So that's 5 new songs. We've got, there are another 2 that I've played to Colin already, and that he's shown that he really likes to sing them. So that's 7. So we're starting to get there, and I really want everything we both really want everything to be finished by the end of this year, so that when we actually do get back to touring properly at the beginning of next year, we'll have a new album to tour with. And the great thing is, our last album made the Billboard 100 top 100 album sales. So I'm really hoping we can go another step further with this, and it's that feels really exciting.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think there have been a few rock number ones who'd be good to see the Zombies at the top of the rock chart, the top of the Billboard album charts. That
would be brilliant. That would be really good.
Yeah, and well deserved, because you're so kind of, or at least pre-pandemic, you were so in your stride playing live. So in terms of getting started with gigs next year, where will you be? Will you be in North America?
I think we start off in the UK, actually.
In the UK?
Yeah. And then we're going to do one of those music-themed cruises. We've done quite a few of these, where you get sort of 18, 19 bands on a huge liner, and you cruise up from Miami, and we're going to do one of those. And then I think we come straight back. I'm not quite sure what happens after that, but I think we're going to Scandinavia and Germany in the autumn of 2022.
Yeah, but we will be. We've got. I think there's USA and Canada sort of penciled in for summer as well.
Okay, cool.
So that'd be great.
So you'll have a full on kind of year next year, and
fingers crossed.
Pretty psyched for that. Given all that's happened, do you feel kind of ready and confident that live music is coming back?
Oh yeah, I mean, the thing is, when you play live, it's fantastic. And the thing is that we obviously get people that have followed us all the way through our career, but we always get a really sizable component of people sort of your age as well, which is fantastic. And when you do get a large young component, and the feeling that you can actually relate to that generation with some of the older stuff that you're doing, as well as some of the newer stuff, the energy that you get back from the crowd is fantastic. And it's that's so rejuvenating. And it's that makes us want to keep creating and putting things together. One of the most exciting things in this business is actually to take a new song to if it's one of mine, which it often is, to get Colin involved with it and make sure that he relates to it and can sing it well. and then take it to the band and feeling it really start to come together, sometimes in the most unexpected ways, which is really why we need to get together, because sometimes the way you think it's going to go in your head, you get to the middle eight and then suddenly you think, no, that's not working. It needs to do this. And to have that creative energy and work going on is fantastically exciting. And it's what we've always done. And it's such a privilege to be this age and to feel that process can still work and that people relate to it. People of all generations seem to relate to it. I mean, that's unlooked for. When we were sort of 18, 19, 20, we thought the songs that we were making would have a life of about 2 years, and the fact that some things are still going on with some of those early songs now. And we've had a thing with Chelsea Football Club over here, where they picked up on Time of the Season, and there's a rapper stroke hip hop guy who's done a remix on it, which is, it's really cool. And to see all the young Chelsea players really grooving to that on the video is, it feels so cool. It really does.
I was just talking about, because it's Time of the Season that they use.
Yeah.
And it's also in the new film Cruella, which was released last week.
Yeah.
It's a song that just seems to be so timeless. People use it all the time, in films especially, in commercials. And I think it's one of the reasons that we've been able to grow our fan base so effectively, is that songs like Time of the Season, when she's not there as well. And more now, This Will Be Our Year seems to be becoming popular, doesn't it?
Huge. Well, there was that cover of it that's not as good as the original, I think, by OK Go. It was still good. And that turned a lot of people on to the Zombies. I remember when that came out a while ago. And I mean, that is a fantastic song. I mean, but that's just the tip of the iceberg for those people listening who don't know. But I saw that you had an interview about the kind of collaboration with Chelsea. And in the article that I read, there was a photo of the King's Road in the 1960s. And I've got to be honest, I kind of wish that we were in the 1960s now, because the King's Road has deteriorated in how kind of cool it looks and fun. And I just like that whole time just seems so magical. So you seem like you're as excited though right now about making new music as you might have been back then. Are you as excited about the whole scene, like rock music and new stuff coming out, or are you kind of focused in on what you're doing?
Well, I mean, go on.
I think. Go on, you go.
No, you take it.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that we're all as excited or more excited about what we're doing and about the whole process of songwriting and recording. And as I said before, we all love to go out and play concerts. And Rod often says he thinks that there's more energy on stage now than there was when we were 18 or 19. I mean, we don't take any prisoners when we play live. It's we give everything. We don't leave anything on the stage. It's full on. But I have to say, personally, I'm quite selective about what I listen to from other artists. I think there's probably a lot of new music that it doesn't affect me, perhaps in the same way as it used to when I was younger. And I've got a theory that the music that appeals to you in your formative years stays with you. That's the music that you kind of listen to. So I go back to my 20s probably when I'm choosing music, rather than new. Of course there's good new music now, but I'm just talking about in general. I tend to listen to the music that I listened to in my formative years. What about you, Rod?
Well, I mean, I agree with that, really. I think what you say about, when you're first discovering new music of whatever genre, you get incredibly excited about it. I remember the first time I heard Elvis Presley sing Hound Dog, and I remember the first time I heard Little Richard, in those early rock and roll years. And you have to be there at that time to realise what sort of effect those things have. And even the jazz I was listening to at that time as well. I mean, but I do think that there was something about the 60s. This is probably my age, I don't know, but I do think there was something about the 60s that was an incredibly explosive and optimistic time. And I do think that all the boundaries were suddenly taken down. And one of the great things was the people that owned the record companies didn't know what the hell was going on. So they would just leave everything up to the artists. So you could do really experimental things. I know they probably don't sound experimental now, but at the time they really were. And all the older guys that were running the record companies sort of said, well, I don't understand any of this, so you just get on with it. And strangely enough, there was that caused a huge connection with fans because they reacted to that sort of upsurge of musicality and that upsurge of experimentation and that upsurge of positivity and the fact that everything suddenly seemed possible. It was the first time that young people had really had a voice. You have to remember, I mean, someone of your age has to remember that after the war years, this was only 10 years later when we first got turned on to that sort of rock and roll music and everything. And then the Beatles' first record even was not until 1962 with Love Me Do. So it really wasn't very, very far away. And suddenly the UK became the head of the cultural fountain, really, including music, including art, fashion, everything. And it was just a very, very exciting time. And that feeling of being able to move into areas that no one had moved into musically before was huge. And you have people like the Beatles, who I thought were the first progressive band, because they really started to push the boundaries and to try and experiment with everything that was around in all forms of music. And they put it into their own music. And honestly, it felt to me as if England will, in the music papers, they suddenly started conquering America. This was unheard of, for an English band to be able to conquer America. And it felt like England winning the World Cup every week, all the headlines in the newspapers. It really did, because all these unbelievable things were happening time after time. And I remember being, after discovering Elvis when I was 11 years old, suddenly, just 8 years later, we had a #1 in America. And we later found out that Elvis had that record on his jukebox, and this was just unbelievable at the time. So, we had to be affected by that whole movement and that whole thing. And it did feel like a very creative and inventive time.
Well, it's a time that feels very far removed, if I'm being completely honest, from what's going on right now. Like I don't know, I don't feel the same sense of pride that whole era makes you feel about British music, and particularly British rock music. And what are both of your thoughts on the role in which technology and the rise of technology in music, Pro Tools, auto-tune, all the rest of it, and technology in pop culture with social media, how much has that kind of changed things? Because anything like just the way all drums now just sound so like clinical and kind of overly perfect, and you compare that to the like kind of way kind of thicker but like smaller snare sound that like Ringo would get, and all these drummers who play so complicated, and that's just the drum sound. Take every instrument, take the vocals, the way the harmonies blend. I don't know whether tech is improving it. What's your relationship with tech like?
I think that in some ways you're absolutely right. And I think the fact is that you can take a drum loop now and it sounds great immediately. And you can make a record in a very, very short time by taking a drum loop, sampling something else that somebody else has played, a little vocal phrase or something, and you can put that on, and you've almost got something which sounds commercial immediately. In the old days, you had to build a song up from scratch, and if the structure didn't work, it just didn't happen. It just didn't work, and so you were confined to those areas. But I believe with vocals as well, everything in the world is auto-tuned now, and it's great to hear people sing in tune, but at the same time, you get a sort of metallic undertone to everything that's being sung. And that drives me up the wall. I can't stand it, particularly if someone really can't sing in tune and the auto-tune really makes this automatic metallic sound go on. I find it very soulless personally. I'm not saying that I find everything that I hear soulless, but I do think it's much easier to put something together now that immediately sounds commercial and pleasant to the ear. Whereas in the old days, you had to come up with something. I mean, do you agree, Cole, that chords? You often talk to me about chord sequences. They seem to be very, very important in early writing, didn't they?
Yes, of course.
And it's not so much now. They generally tend to be very obvious chord sequences that you hear, don't they? And not terribly inventive musically.
I know. I was going to say a couple of things, and one is that with a lot of modern music, if you were to try and do it, as Rod and I often do, we do piano and voice concerts where we might tell a few stories and then we just play the songs, just the two of us. And I think you would find with quite a few modern songs that there's no song there. If you take the sounds away, there's no song. And I always think that's it's a very good test to see if a song works, if it just works with piano and voice. I know I take notice when Rod plays a song to me. If it works in that context, I think that it will work with the band. The other thing we've noticed is that rather than phoning in performances, which is what a lot of people do nowadays, it works much better for us if we have the band all together in the studio at one time. On our last album, that's what we did. It was virtually a live recording in a studio setting. I think we only added vocal harmonies. The rest of it was all live. And we've tried to do that on the tracks we've done so far, but at the moment we're not able to because people can't travel. And as Rod said, in particular, our bass player lives in Denmark, and of course he can't get over at all. But I think that that's a wonderful way to record, to have all the guys in the studio, as we did in the 60s. There's a huge amount of energy, and I think it's much easier to record like that than to record one at a time in separate studios. So in that respect, I suppose I really do like going back to how recording was. Firstly, everyone in the studio recording together, and secondly, making sure that a song does work. It's got a structure. It is interesting. The chord sequences have some validity, rather than just people banging out some kind of improvised thing and putting a song on top of it. So for me, I think I'm a little bit old-fashioned in the way I choose songs.
Well,
I agree with all that, but
not in that way, though. Sorry to interrupt, but that was really important what you just said about being all together. So, did you guys try working remotely?
Well, we have done. I wouldn't say
many times. Yeah,
we haven't necessarily all been in different studios. But it might be that a guitarist in the band will come in the past and do his guitar parts separately, or I would come in and do the lead vocals separately. That might happen. But on the last album, we decided to do it completely the opposite, making sure that we're all there all the time. And so far on this album, that's what we've tried to do as well.
But
Sorry, Rod.
No, I was going to say that, well, actually, just picking up on what Colin's just said, on a couple of the tracks where they were very composed before we started, we have managed to, finish the track by doing things remotely, haven't we? We managed to get, our drummer to come in and put a drum track on something I'd already laid down on the organ track on Different Game, for instance. And we even got Soren to do that in Denmark. On that track, it worked because you and I had rehearsed so much together with the original keyboard and you singing. So we were both playing in sympathy very much with each other as we recorded. But it doesn't work on all of them. And what Colin's saying is really true. And it was great on the last album. But I mean, both of us, I agree with everything Colin said, but with both of us, you have to realise we're a couple of old geezers now. So these are thoughts that come from a long time of being in the business, and and who knows what's right. If something really works in the end, then it's brilliant.
Well, I mean, we're only really saying what works for us, aren't we?
Yeah.
And
Right. But it's important, I think, for younger people to get together, to be together, to be
well,
face to face, to
that's
celebrate
the
life.
joy of music. That is the joy of music,
Absolutely.
to play together. And somehow, whatever the saying is, the sum of the parts is more than the whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
When musicians all get together and play a song, something happens.
mm,
And what comes out of it is different to
yeah,
what the song was before. And
yeah,
that really is the exciting bit about making records and making music. So I think when people do record separately, they miss out on a lot of the joy of recording and making a song work.
Yeah, I think as well in the sense that there is something lacking if people can't just go face to face with someone, you know, or even just go into, like, if a band can't go to a pub, you know, theoretically, not that you guys would, but like, you know, if you put the Beatles in Hamburg, uh, in that small bar, like, and they just played, they'd knock people's socks off.
yeah,
And like, whilst there are some great records right now, if you put some of the most commercially successful artists, I don't want to name names now, but if you stuck them in a pub or wherever, they actually wouldn't be able to do anything because they
yeah,
just create things on laptops.
yeah.
Um, do you worry about the state of the world that everybody? I mean, obviously we've been in a pandemic, but is everybody kind of getting accustomed to sort of living life from a bunker, being stuck in a dungeon, and you know, being trapped behind computer screens? Is that a real
Do you mean
risk for
just
the future of
musically,
music?
or
Yeah, for the future of music in particular. I mean, in general, obviously, but
well, I think there is an element of that. But I mean, there are some great, and I'm afraid I can't off the top of my head give you any names, but I often just I'll look up new singer-songwriters and just listen to them online. And there are some good songwriters out there. It's just getting their songs heard that seems to be the problem. I think the writers are there, but it's how you get to be heard. That's the thing. I'm very anti these tight playlists that we were talking about. Rod and I were talking about this earlier on. You know, it's so hard to get onto radio. It's so tough. People perhaps adding 2 songs in a week, you know, particularly the major BBC stations, they're adding 2 songs a week, and there are thousands of records made every week. And so it's so hard to get a major radio station to play your music. I don't know what the answer is, really.
Well, we're old enough to remember, and in fact, it had a lot of input for us. The Pirates, when the Pirates came on the scene, suddenly from needle time, as the BBC used to call it at the time, which was literally about half an hour a week, wasn't it, of being able to play records?
Yeah.
You suddenly had the Pirates illegally broadcasting pretty much 24 hours a day. But the great thing was that all the DJs were hugely passionate about music. They honestly were. I mean, some of those old names now, you know, it's hard to equate it in that way, but they really, really were. And they were knocked out with what was going on the music scene. And they'd find something and they'd talk about it with huge passion. And the audiences responded in a huge way to that. They really did. They got carried on. I remember also when the start of FM happened, similarly, in America, I remember I was just starting to tour with Argent. And I remember hearing the first Crosby, Stills and Nash album being played on a station. They played the whole album. And then they said, that's fantastic. We're going to play it again. And they played the whole thing again. This was really quite unbelievable, but the audiences had never been so big. They really hadn't. People respond to that genuine connectivity and enthusiasm. They really, really do. And nowadays, as Colin said, everything's tied down so tightly to what the producers of particular radio shows think people should be hearing. And it tends to be very safe. You know, you don't get things coming from real left field, generally speaking, on general radio.
No, it's really bland. The playlisting is really, really bland. But in the era of pirate and FM, did the DJs kind of choose the music, or did they have a big role?
No, they chose the music.
They chose everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've had a couple of DJs on the podcast, and I mean, this is showing a real lack of expertise on my part, which was swiftly corrected. But I kind of spoke to people who were big, you know, on Capitol in the 90s and stuff, as if they got to choose the music, because I was kind of thinking, why on earth would anyone want to be a DJ
Well,
unless
they probably
you got to
didn't
choose
in
the
the
tunes?
90s. They
But
probably
they
didn't in
didn't.
the
They didn't,
No.
yeah.
No,
And they
but in the
don't now.
60s,
They don't now.
they
No.
did. And then when BBC, when the government made the pirates go off the air, and BBC became, you know, the only station you could listen to, it was just so different. And the what they were trying to put across was the fact this is exactly the same, but it's now properly regulated. It was nothing like the same, even in those days. And nowadays, you know, with the best will in the world, most record program presenters, with a few exceptions, are people that are celebrities in inverted commas, and that seems to be the only important thing.
They don't seem to care about the music,
Exactly,
like to that extent of knowing like all the album tracks and the deep cuts, and it's just the same like top line sing. You know, I'm imagining your most played tunes like Time of the Season and stuff. They're going to get loads of radio play, but no one's playing album cuts. No one's playing
exactly
deep cuts, and it's such a shame. That was what made FM radio great, right?
And also one of the things that I think we've lost with losing vinyl. I'm not saying I'm not a person who thinks, you know, you can only listen to vinyl. I'm really not, and I stream all the time. I'm as guilty of things as anybody, because it's so easy and you can find things immediately. You know, when you stream. I mean, with my sort of 1,000+ vinyl collection, I can never find anything that I want to play. I mean, that's the downside of it. But the great thing was that music was really an experience in those days, because you would buy a 12-inch vinyl album, you would take it back in a really excited way, you'd sit, you know, with your partner or whatever in front of the record player, and you'd open the gatefold and you'd start reading about every track as you were listening to it, and you put all your attention on it. You wouldn't do what I do now, which is start to play something and then I'll think, oh, I better just check that email and, you know, pick up the phone or something like that. You put your whole attention onto listening to this new album. You'd see who wrote each song. You'd see who produced each song, who was playing on each song. It became a really immersive experience. And I think that's so lacking now because of just the way of the world. And I think that's a real shame. And the other thing is, you're talking about deep cuts. And the thing is that nowadays people maybe pick up a couple of things which are most instantaneous on an album, you know, a song which immediately connects, and they'll play that and love it, and then they move on to something else. But in the old days, you put an album on, and maybe the 2 or 3 tracks which you liked least when you first played it, after a couple of weeks, they were slow burners. They became your favorite cuts on the album. And that doesn't seem to happen now. And I think that general contextual experience is a shame for being lost, you know. But having said all that, I do the same thing. You know, I stream what I've heard and what I really like, and things become more instant, but people's concentration gets less and less. And I think that's a shame too.
We've got an abundance of content now, and an abundance of record. We can listen to any record that we want, even like, whereas back in the day, it was hard to find some things. Like now we can even listen to every single Elvis record, whereas I guess in the UK, you could never get that stuff, or every last single, every special edition, every remix. It's all there for 10 quid a month. But how much time over this past year and a half have you spent listening to music versus creating and making music?
Well, I mean, sorry, Colin, you go on.
Oh, okay. I've been desperately trying to write music, so I've spent quite a lot of time trying to write music rather than listening to it, to be absolutely honest. But like Rod, you know, I've discovered the joy of streaming music. You know, I can look up obscure names and find obscure albums, and it is great that you can do that. But over the last year or so, I have spent probably more time trying to write than listening to music. How about you, Rod? Have you been listening to a lot of stuff?
Well, I've always listened to a lot of music, but it's not necessarily completely, you know, pop and rock music. And that's always been the case with me. I still listen to a lot of jazz, But the jazz I listen to, actually, in terms of what you've been saying, Cole, I still, my favourite periods are still what I thought was a wonderful time around 1958 with the early Miles Davis band and John Coltrane and Cannonball Adderley coming through. I think it was a magical time for music. But I still listen to a lot of classical music as well. But I do listen to a lot of rock and pop music as well. But most of it tends not to be current. And I'm sure, as you said earlier, Colin, that's a lot to do with my age, actually. You know, I mean, when you're 18, you go to parties and you've got a lot of young people around you, and people will say all the time, have you heard this? Oh, listen to this. Look, what's that record that's playing? Oh, it's brilliant. I mean, nowadays, you know, in a much older framework, I'm in a family situation with my wife. You know, it's basically just me and my wife here. And you tend to gravitate to more of the things that you know. You know, so I know I'm very bad at that, and I really don't turn on to probably some of the things which I'd love. I still play, you know, early Ray Charles records from when he was completely a rhythm and blues singer. I still play some of the old blues stuff. Just yesterday, I put on B.B. King's first ever single, 3 o'clock blues, which I still think I think his voice is wonderful on it. He recorded that in his front room, and you know, the recording's primitive, but it just sounds just so full of life and passion, you know.
Sounds better than if they'd corrected any of the mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. It ends on the strangest note. I mean, it's a terrible ending, but you know what you're hearing up to that point, it's just great. And his young voice, you know, because he was very young then, it's just soaring, and his guitar playing. And you can imagine how people like Eric Clapton and you know, the Stones would listen to those things and be just completely blown away by it, because it was like nothing we'd ever come across before. And, you know, and you can't have that naivety again in the best sense. You can't, because the whole world is different now. But I mean, you know, this is probably rose-tinted glasses again. I know all that. I really do understand that. You know,
well, but I think there are a lot of people who agree with you, me included, that was the magical time. Whether it's 50s, 60s, 70s, it feels like it all got very corporate from the 80s onward. But that's my 2 cents, and just from listening to all the music, and I still keep up to date with all the modern stuff as well. But I think, I mean, you talked about Ray Charles. That's as close to perfection as you can get, really.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, guys, for joining me on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it. And the link to your upcoming streaming concert from Abbey Road is going to be in the show notes for all the fans and listeners to check out. And I hope you're able to get back out on the road. Can't wait for the new album. And yeah, really awesome to talk to you. And I've been listening to a lot of both of your kind of solo work as well, like Argent and Colin. Like, I just listened to your greatest hits as well. And yeah, just as fantastic as the Zombies. So yeah, it's great to have you guys still so passionate about music. And yeah, hope to see you live next year when it all comes back. In the meantime, I'm looking forward to the stream.
Oh, that's great. And I hope we haven't sounded too old in some of our opinions.
No, I love it. I love it. I want to hear, this is what I want to hear, because, you know, I've had to put up with my brother's horrible music all morning. It's been good to speak to some, you know, men of wisdom today who share my wisdom on pop culture. So
I agree with
thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks for all the music, and thanks for your time today. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.
Do you sometimes struggle to get up in the morning or wind down for bed at night? I used to find it so difficult. I woke up with no sense of positivity and brightness. I was void of motivation and spirit. This changed completely when I started waking up with a Lumi body clock. These incredible devices mimic the light and colour of a real sunrise and sunset, transforming the experience of waking up and going to sleep completely. Rather than being suddenly woken up with an alarm clock, the Lumi body clock will wake you up gradually with a natural sunrise. The Lumi body clock has been shown to improve the quality of sleep and awakening, and to boost mood and productivity in clinical trials. You can personalize your sunrise and sunset from 15 to 90 minutes with their clinically tested unique natural light and more than 20 sleep and wake sounds. We all deserve to sleep well and to wake up feeling fresh. So if you're finding this a challenge and you want to try a new approach, go to lumi.com. If you're enjoying the Greatest Music of All Time podcast, you can keep up to date with all of our latest episodes for free by subscribing. If you're watching on YouTube, the subscribe button is located at the top of the Tom Cridland YouTube page. It's also at the bottom right of any video that you watch on YouTube. If you're listening on an audio platform, such as Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can subscribe at the top of the page.